All right, well, welcome everybody to LinkedIn Live Part 2. We're doing Tech for Business AI live chats. I'm your host, Kelsey, and today we have I'm now going to the prompt doctor with CIT's COO and CISO joining to diagnose all of your AI workflows. With that in mind, we want your questions and comments, everything in the chat. So by all means, spam us in the chat and make sure you come back next week because I'm going to talk on the ROI of AI and hopefully that's the only acronyms that I'll have to use next week. But for now, let's get kicked off time. Welcome to AI Live Chat.
Thank you. Happy to be here. I'm not sure I can really qualify as the prompt doctor, but we'll give it a shot, see what happens.
We'll give it a shot. We're going to pretty much it. We'll start off with an easy one. Then I was like, okay, right. And then marketing. If I go to AI and I go, write me a marketing email, is that a good prompt?
I mean, it's a prompt. So I guess I was kind of interested. It was one of the things I kind of wanted to think about it long term, and we can talk about it a little bit more as we go along. But no, it's not a great prompt. I wanted to kind of get some people's input on how things have gone historically from prompting. From our experience, when we work with a lot of people, you kind of get one or the other response when it comes to AI. It's a little bit of a gimmick, or it's amazing. It really helps me with what I'm doing day in, day out. We'll dig into this. I'm certain we'll get into it. But from my perspective, I think what ends up happening is if you're adding poor prompts, you'll get poor responses. And so the prompt that you have, you'll get a response. It just might not be everything that you're looking for. But that's not unusual. That's how most people start with working with chat in general. One of the frameworks that we use at CIT is referred to as CRIT, which is an acronym that stands for context, role, instructions, tone. And really what the intent of what you're doing here is you're trying to build a very good prompt that'll help you to go through building out that quote, or I'm sorry, that prompt itself. So giving the AI context of what you're looking for. What kind of marketing email am I trying to create? Is there something that we're doing specifically? What role am I playing? You're an expert in marketing, whatever. Here's what I expect you to do. So the instruction aspect. And then if there's any tones, you can also prompt it to give you some questions too, which I would say is really ideal to clean up that context. One of the real great hints from my point of view is to tell AI that you want to prompt it one question at a time, because otherwise it'll just jam all 5 questions or however many you tell it to go ahead and ask you 10. It'll jam them all into one, and then you get to bullet point the responses and answering one at a time. It certainly works a lot better from my perspective. And then tell it what you want the output to be. What am I expecting? I am expecting a Word document, or I'm expecting, the framework for my marketing document, whatever it is. Whatever that output is, you should tell it what your expectation is, or document as an example.
So many things, which explains something from me. That was the case. One of my favorites is, ask me additional questions for the best possible output. And then, yes, it will give me 10 questions. And yes, I will scroll back and forth and try to remember the number of questions and go back and forth. Oh, that's so handy to go. Ask me questions one at a time, and then tell me when you're ready. I'm getting many things, but do not do the thing until I tell you to do the thing.
Yes, exactly.
So getting over the day, right? And get the email, telling about cars, surprise report, right where you're going, copy stats, context, the role, the interview, and that was the T again. Remind me.
It depends. I think it's tone. Yeah.
Joe, see, I'm learning these acronyms. They're sticking with me. So let's say that then I had a prompt that was something like, write me a blog post about AI and then make it a social media post and also summarize the pros and cons and list some tools and format it as a table. What reaction if you're typing that in ChatGPT? What are you going? I would maybe do that differently.
Yeah. So one of the best things about AI and chat in general is you can actually ask it to help you. So just generally speaking, that was a lot. And so that's probably a lot of directions all at once. So where I would start with that saying, here's what I'm looking for. Can you help me flesh this out a little bit? Or again, ask me additional questions. But typically speaking, I do try to default to that framework. there are a lot of tools out there that will really help you out. And this one I might as well get to it as fast as possible. There's a tool out there called Prompt Cowboy. And I'll be honest with you, ever since I've come across that tool, I've gotten incredibly lazy when it comes to my prompt writing. So I tell it what I'm looking for, and it kind of builds it around the script framework and spits out a prompt that I can then use in Gemini, Copilot, ChatGPT, whatever it is that we want to use. You still have the ability to edit too. So if you didn't like what it was saying exactly, at least it gets you a really nice starting point. But AI is your friend. And the moral of the story really is it can only give you as good a feedback as you give it. So, I'll use the analogy as AI is like a mirror. If you don't give it much, that's what you're going to get back.
That makes a lot of sense. And because we're here and we're live and we got time, we're going to try presenting in Prompt Cowboy because he brought it up and named it. And I was, we're going to go ahead and we're going to try it and just see what happens. So let's see here. Yeah, there we go. Prompt Cowboy. Step live. I did just copy that lovely prompt that I had and said, let me just put everything in here. I'd already planned out to say, that's a lot. You just told me everything that you needed.
Right.
And I'm not going to give it anything else in here. Obviously, right, there's reasoning, deep research, custom GPT, but I'm going to say I had no idea. I just want it to be a standard prompt. And we're just going to see what happens. So similarly, right, you already touched on this a little bit to say it gives it a structure. And right, this is obviously different headers of situation, task, objective, and knowledge. But that's pretty impressive for something that I didn't give it to go.
Right. Right. And again, you can make updates to this. So if there was something that you wanted to do, and you can see off to the right where it's got improved prompts, you can add additional things that you want. I forgot that I needed to add whatever. Or you can even edit that the first thing that you put in as your original prompt. You can make updates to that too of, oh yeah, by the way, I forgot this is a marketing campaign that's going to be blah, blah, blah. And then you hit update and it will update the prompt for you as well. So there's a lot of really good power in here as you're not seeing exactly what you're looking for. But again, it's really designed to kind of get you started. It's not always perfect, but it sure gives me a lot more than if I started with the basic prompt that you had originally, the lazy prompt as it references it.
But I do like that in here, if I was going through this, right, the song saying goes, the blog post should be this long. And that's context that maybe I wouldn't think the right out of the gate, but I need to know so that you go, how long do you want it? I'm going, Todd's going to tell me that's TLDR. It's just that's most that we're getting. And I could just go in and edit it. And then to your point going, then you could save it and use it for something else.
Right. Yeah. One of the other things I really wanted to touch on, and might as well throw it out there, is I feel like prompting is iterative more often than not. And I'll use an example of myself. When I first started playing around with chats, one of the things that I was doing was legal work. And I would say, hey, I need XYZ legal document, whatever. And I'd hit go and my output would be pretty blah.
That's the copyrighted term for that, right?
Yep, it wasn't great, and so I'd go, all right, well that wasn't what I wanted. I have to do a bunch of this, so I'm just going to move on and start writing it myself. However, if I started to do additional changes, tell it what you didn't like, make changes. Another great example of an iterative would be, what did I miss? So if I had some document in there and I had some information, a lot of times again, AI output is going to be a mirror. This will be a really good one too, is I'm a big fan of putting in additional prompts and please go back and review what we've got so far and remove anything that has any kind of bias or comes across as non-collaborative. That would be a great prompt to kind of get rid of anything that I'm leading it towards an answer that may or may not be correct. I think it's right. But if I add that, the results will come out of it really much nicer. One of the other things I think is really interesting, just because I'm on a flow now and I can't stop talking, is you can change the way that you want it to interact with you. You're like, you want it to be more casual. You can tell it, I would like this to come out as more casual. If you wanted to tell it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, it'd do that too. So you can prompt it the way you want to. And again, my point ultimately here was it should be iterative. And the more that you work with it, you'll get better at it. So the phrase I was going to use is, I would say, while I won't claim the prompt doctor title yet, It is an absolute a skill you can absolutely get much better at. So one of the things I'd recommend doing is try doing anything with it at least once a day. You don't have to spend 20 minutes on it. You can spend 2 to 5 minutes just playing around with it. And it can be anything that pops in your head while you're getting ready for the morning or something that came in on an email. But I would recommend doing something with it because it is like a muscle. The more you use it, the more you're going to get better at it. The better you get at it, you'll open up the door. So eventually you'll get to what we refer to as the aha moment.
It's a lot of it's the whole journey of prompting. Hey, just start here, which made me think a little bit of going, okay, so you're going in and you're trying something new. How do you go at it when you're going, okay, either I can copy and paste all of these things, or right, one of my favorites is take a screenshot and then dump it in. And then that way I don't have to give you all of that context, which, yes, right, mixed results depends on what you're putting in, depends on how much context you gave it to begin with. But kind of what are your thoughts on some of those, what I'm going to call shortcuts that I hate to say it's another lazy prompting, but going the same way that you check in an email, a screenshot or screen grab or whatever you want to call it. What are kind of your thoughts or what are some of the things that you've tried where you've done, yep, I've done that, and or some of the governance things where you're going, yes, do that, but maybe think about what you just screenshotted.
Oh, wow. That was really great. And it's two separate questions, but to answer it, there is some great power to be had from screenshots. For example, I was using collaborative as an example, as I had an employee who was very quick to come with the answer, and he was struggling with communicating with other members of the leadership team. And he's like, here's what the answer is. It's not how he said it, but he basically just dumped it into chat and said, this is what I think we need to do. And instead of copying it and pasting, I just took a screenshot of it, threw it into AI and had it reference this. But again, I would like you to remove any biases. And I want this to come across as collaborative. And it just pulled it all up. I didn't have to copy it. I didn't have to type it all over. It makes it a huge difference on it. Um, the privacy and collaborative stuff, I think is really fantastic. I want to circle back to this because I think it needs a lot more conversation as we get in here. But one of the things that AI does have the capability of doing is building memory. And as you're starting to get used to it, so for example, I've got my own personal Gemini account, and it learns everything about me incredibly quickly. But I have to be very careful what I put in it because if I put information in there, it's now in the cloud. It's got it. And so you want to be careful about what you're putting in it. So from a company, anything that would be sensitive information, PII, employee data, financials, those things you just need to be really careful about where you've got the information, how it's being stored. The easiest term around it from the security point is making sure you have the appropriate guide rails in place before you just start putting everything in there. But to answer the original question that you had is, does it make sense to do that? The answer is absolutely. I'll use a personal example. I was messing around with Gemini, and my wife was looking for she's going to be in the St. Patrick's Day parade. And she's like, I need an Irish hat. And so I'm starting to Google stuff and I find one and she had one that she saw in a movie. She's like, this one, I want this one exactly. And so I took a picture of it and I dumped it into Gemini and said, I'm looking for a hat very similar to this, blah, 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 blah. And it came out and it spit it right back out. So yes, absolutely. Screenshots, pictures, absolutely use them, but also be somewhat careful about what you're doing too.
Wait, you mean the people that are going to chat GPT saying, here's all of my health information? And you're going,
Yeah, I'd be careful about that. I would try to make that as generic as possible because, like I said, it will remember. If you're not paying for a paid version of them, you're essentially giving license to. There's something we've said this from CIT's perspective before, but if you're not paying for it, you are the product that's being sold. So you are now giving your information to the cloud, and the cloud now has it and remembers it forever. So I would be very careful about that. But yes, I wouldn't dump all my personal information, especially health records and whatnot, in there as well.
I think you did touch though on a really good use case that I definitely have used and I haven't realized the, hey, list all of this out for me. Because we've all been in programs where you're like, hey, all this is in a table and it's all of this data, but it's in a PDF or something and you're okay, I can copy paste it or whatever. And you're like, it's not in the right format and I need to note. And you're like, or I could just screenshot or upload the PDF and go, can you just make this into a bulleted list or as a Word doc for me? Okay, thanks. Because yeah, that's the type of stuff that I personally have not a lot of patience to do manually. So that tends to be when I get that feeling that I'm bored. I tend to go, I think AI could do this.
Yeah, wow, absolutely. I used the legal example earlier too, but I'll use it again. I get a lot of legal docs sent to me, and I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to be a lawyer, but I also want to make sense of it. And so a lot of times I will do the correct prompting and saying, "Here's the context. Here's this document that I got from a vendor. Da 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 da. What I want you to do is be a legal advisor for me when I'm looking for us to translate this into normal everyday human English." Not the gobbledygook that's legal. Sorry, people, I'm not picking on you. And it's great. It's fantastic. And it's almost always a PDF, right? I can't do a whole lot with the PDF, but I can dump that into AI and AI will look it over and go, this is a public document. There's nothing crazy in there, but we will read through it and come back. As an example, one of our vendors had a, a single paragraph and it was written so complex that I was like, I get what it's trying to say, but can you spell it out to me? Again, talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old. And it created like 3 pages of what that meant in this one paragraph. So that, again, not picking on lawyers, but it's not surprising that it's hard to dig through some of that and get the context you're looking for without the help of an expert that's right at your fingertips.
100%. So we've kind of gone over the like, hey, just give it something and create something out of nothing. Hey, give it a little bit and still create something, and give it a lot of something and go simplify it down instead of creating more out of this. Are there any other prompt use cases that you're like, yeah, I keep on using it for
Yeah, I mean, I think you had a great example when it comes to the marketing stuff, and it could be anything, right? I've built RACI matrix, which is the responsibility, accountable, informed. It's the matrix that says who is doing what. And as I'm building those types of things out, the further you go into them, you start, well, I need something to supplement this. So, for example, I can say, take this input and I'll create an executive summary that I want it in 2 sentences explaining what I'm trying to do and make it super simple so I can get the attention of people that I want. Turn this into a one pager that I can use for the marketing team, et cetera, et cetera. So those additional things that you were kind of talking about from a marketing, I was using a different example, but the same concept behind it is I can use more and more things. Salespeople love one pagers. They want to give you one piece of paper that tells you everything. So again, having AI simplify it and jam it down into 1 or 2 pages is incredibly helpful. But again, it continues to do that iterative piece that I think is absolutely critical to get to where you want to go.
100%, that you don't just give it a prompt and then say, well, now I'm done. I got my answer. Bye.
Yep.
Yeah.
Another use case, I expect most people to go down this path, but it's out there. One that's very interesting to me is I think Kyle touched on it a lot last week was doing stuff with vibe coding. In case anybody doesn't know what the phrase vibe coding is you're essentially using your prompting skills to create something, an application, integrations into other apps, et cetera. But it's still a prompting conversation to do what AI is doing all the work in the background. But that's another great use case as well.
100%. I know that Kyle and I went into last week too a lot of right agents and giving it context. And we have a lot of different podcasts on a lot of those different topics. So I won't tangent too hard from that. But just if anybody's listening and go, you just mentioned agents, we do have content for that. We're just not gonna, we could talk a whole nother 2 hours on that. Uh, but two, if anybody's on LinkedIn to listening, and by all means, feel free to throw things in the comment. Todd and I are more than happy to pivot on anything that we're talking about to all of a sudden a completely different topic about AI. So by all means, throw it in the comments. We're here for it. But two, as we kind of talk through, right, iterative and talk through use cases, what else would you kind of say is right? We get, and we've seen it at our AI leadership workshop where people go, oh, I can save a prompt in Copilot, or right, I use the plugin TextBlaze in Chrome so that I can just have a little short keystroke that I can use to put in a prompt. But I find myself sometimes hesitating keeping the prompts because I tend to kind of be a vibe prompter and I'm going, well, I liked it, but there's got to be something better. So I don't want to reuse it. What's kind of your personal stance on saved prompts and whether or not you use those?
I don't use saved ones. I occasionally will go back and look at them, but I almost never reuse them. But the reason behind it is purely me. And when I say that, what I'm saying is I want to continuously learn. And if I just copied and paste something I did already, there's no learning in there for me. Whereas if I'm thinking about it a little bit different, because today is different than yesterday and the day before for me, as I continuously try to learn, it forces me to use my brain differently. So I don't want to just rely on stuff that I already have. So me personally, I don't do it, but I don't see any downside for it either. I just prefer to type it out, or like I said, I'm thinking about it slightly differently. So I may throw it into Prompt Cowboy and get a slightly different response from it, but I'll do it uniquely almost every time.
100%. Yeah, that's such an interesting way of putting it. But yes, that's exactly it that you're going. Putting a prompt into an agent that you want it to remember or is building up part of context is different than me going, every single time I make a marketing email, I use the same prompt and I fill in all the things and I'm going, yeah, but as you always say, it depends. How would I
Yep.
need the fresh, or else I'm going to end up editing so much of the prompt, which I then go, yes, this is a little foreshadowing ROI, but going, if you were getting a team going and they're using something like Copilot for the first time, you saved a prompt because, right, you're trying to get people to use it. So you save this prompt, and then you're getting people coming back and saying, well, Todd, I have to edit so much of this prompt. It's unusable. How would you deal with that?
It's a great question. I have done this, but what I've done is I've tailored it. So, as an example, as we were first introducing AI to the organization, that was exactly what I was doing. Is I wanted them to have a prompt that started to do thought processes for them and just kind of get used to what would a good prompt look like. And so I took a generic one that I had written. I think I'd written for myself or something along those lines as kind of a thought process for one of our quarterly meetings. And then I made small changes to it for each department head. And again, this is a little bit of the bias in it, but as I was teaching people, I was okay with this. But what I was doing was then I would write it specifically for, hey, you're in charge of sales, you're in charge of marketing, you're in charge of HR, whatever. So I did do the tweaks that I was looking for. Ultimately, what I was trying to do was find problems that we have to work on. And kind of an example of something this would be something that'd be interesting for most organizations to do is I'll give that in a second, but did that for each person. And I said, here it is. And it took me a little bit of time, but the editing wasn't significant. In hindsight, one of the things that I've been recommending people do is when you're working on stuff in a day to day, as you're starting to get used to it, one of the things that'd be really interesting for you to start to work through, and this kind of alludes to agents and cloud and a variety of other things, is for a week, just write down everything that you can think of that frustrates you or annoys you or whatever it is that you're dealing with. And then when you get to the end of the week, you can kind of look at it and go, what can I do with this? Because you can use AI to solve those problems. Again, we can create agents or a bunch of other things. I do want to kind of expand on agents, even though we said we weren't going to. Um, but it's a great way to start it, right? If I go through the process of what's frustrating me, now I have the context and I can write a prompt about it. Again, if you don't know how to do it, throw it into Prompt Cowboy, but you can say this one thing is da 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 da. How can I automate this process? How can I offload it? Whatever the case may be. That's how I would typically approach it. Uh, so I haven't I should say that when I first started, it was doing little fun things with AI just to get used to it. So, like I said, when you start, do whatever it takes. Day one, tell me what you know about me. Day two, try something slightly different. So those are things that you can kind of do to get things going. But for the most part, I try to stay away from it and I try to tailor it and then give it to somebody as a here's a great example of something that you could write, and then hopefully they can use that and start to riff off of it a little bit.
100%. I'm going to go on one tangent before you get on the agents. So building off of that a little bit, as we look at, right, you're saying, oh, okay, if you brainstorm with it, right, you iterate, do you see a difference of going to AI and saying, here's all of the things, here's what I should give me versus going, yes, well, we stay with the basic prompt going, what sort of things could you make me for a marketing email? What's kind of the difference there? Is there maybe a benefit to having a shorter prompt that's a question versus a prompt that for sure right away tells you everything that you want?
That kind of broke up, so I'm not sure I quite got all of the question. Um,
Here, I can phrase it hopefully more quickly because I feel like I got a little muddled there anyways. The difference between going to AI, asking question about capabilities, such as what sort of marketing email could you make me versus going in and using the couple every single time and saying, well, we marketing email and then writing, length and the format. What's that? But like pros and cons, right? You're talking about iteration versus having a really good count.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I do prefer to kind of, this is kind of, but again, this is me. So I'm sorry, I kind of gave a really bad response. Typically, the way that I like to learn is I like to dive deep on certain things. And so that's kind of how I prompt too, is I want to be incredibly specific. And then again, this is just me. I tend to iterate off of that. So my response would be that that makes the most sense. That's the way I work, but that's kind of how my brain works too. Whereas we're not talking about it, but as an example of other tools that are out there is Notebook LM from Google as an example. When I go to learn things, I want the super broad overview of everything all at once. 10 minutes is all I need, but I want to understand the concept inside and out just to begin before I dive deep. But then I want to get incredibly specific. And that's how my prompting tends to be as well. So that's how I prefer to do it.
I like the choose your flavor, the guys still do way better business and you go, I don't know. I thought I can you'll kind of probably figure out, at least that's my experience as I go and I go, it's so when it doesn't feel right, then trust.
Yeah, I think you said that really well. I mean, AI is here as your assistant. So what works best for you is by far the best way to go about it.
So for chat agents just a little bit. And just getting close to the half an hour mark because you know for like 3 hours. Getting close to that. Ian, what would you want to jump up?
Yeah, so the agent one, the only reason why I wanted to mention it is because we do a ton of stuff with compliance for ourselves and for our customers. And so building agents is incredibly helpful because now when I do chats, I can do chats to an agent that's an expert in a specific compliance field. And my questions to that are going to be a lot different than they are for general things day in and day out. It's not going to be a typical, hey, I want to create a Word document or I want to create an email or anything like that. It's going to be very, very specific of what does it look like when I work with criminal justice information in XYZ situation. So again, still prompting, but it's a totally different way of going about it. Again, I love agent, and again, I'm sure we'll go into it at another time, but it's a wonderful tool set because it has the ability to act as whatever I'm telling it to in that crit format. This is your role. I need you to be the expert on this, so I don't have to go read. I'm not saying I don't, but I don't have to go refresh myself on the 600 word or 600 page document that has to do with XYZ compliance.
Time here. So I think we're going to go ahead. Maybe wrap up this prompting just for today, but we're going to be back next week to talk about the AI ROI. But before I officially sign off, any last thoughts?
No, I think the vast majority of the things that I thought were really incredibly important, I think we really covered it quite well. I mean, like, oh, I got one thing. Not that I thought about it. Anyways, I'll wrap up what I was gonna say, and then I'll throw in my little nugget. I think the way that you prompt is important. I think the iteration piece is incredibly important too. I do want people to be mindful of what they are putting into AI because depending on how you're going about that will be what I mean is specifically is paid versus unpaid training AI agents, putting all your information into a bag, letting the world see it. Maybe you're okay with that, but I would say most people probably shouldn't be. And then again, remembering that you have the memory piece. The last little nugget that I was going to throw out there for you people is if you find that you're in a situation where talk easier, and I'll use an example. You're out walking the dog first thing in the morning and your brain's working and you don't have the ability to stop what you're doing and type. There are tools out there. One example is something called Whisper Flow, where you can actually talk to your phone or whatever, and it'll help you. It is AI, but it'll help you put that context into information that you're looking for, right? You can say whatever your sentence was and say, no, I didn't mean that. What I meant to say is XYZ, and it'll go back and clean that up for you. When you're then done with your walk and you're on your computer again, you can take that output and use it as an input into whatever you're doing for the day. So you can then put that into your chat or research or whatever, and it'll help you throughout the day. So it's a really quick, easy way And talking for someone like myself or Jason Lund, if you've met him at CIT, you can do that much faster than you can type. So that was a good little tool as well.
Thanks for listening. If you liked today's episode, share your thoughts with us. Like, subscribe, or reach out at info@citsolutions.net. For more, visit citsolutions.net/podcast. We'll be back next week with an all-new episode.